Hi, I'm here with Carleen Lyden-Walker from NAMEPA. Carleen, thanks for talking to us. Tell me about how you're feeling being at GST this year. I know you were on a panel yesterday morning and the opening session, and there was talk of people descending at GST, and there was a sense of optimism and proactivity. How do you feel about that? Because of course we are in Europe and we're in Denmark. Of course everybody here is very future forward looking. How do we harness what's going on here and ensure that that goes out to the rest of the industry on a global basis?
Well, Annie, first off, thank you so much for asking me to be with you today. This is my first time to Copenhagen, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be in such a dynamic city. And to have GST here in Copenhagen makes so much sense because it really is a hotbed of activity and development and forward-leaning thinking, and I find that to be extremely exciting. Yesterday, as you mentioned, in the morning I was on a panel and we talked a lot about what industry needs to look at, what industry needs to consider in order to achieve the goals that we'd all like to see. I mean, I think that the entire industry would agree that we need to achieve the goal of decarbonization. It's really, how do we get there? And is there a practical way that we can get there? And we discussed a lot of the strategies for that. And it's not just accelerating change within industry, but it's also accelerating change within some of our regulatory frameworks, such as that which is determined by the IMO.
Yeah.
And
which of course a lot of people here would say, it is what it is, perhaps slower moving than some people might like. But I mean, what's your response to that? Because I know you're very involved.
Well, I can understand a frustration expressed by people that are used to nimble and rapid fire change. But we have to remember the IMO operates within the framework of the United Nations. And the United Nations does wonderful work on a global basis, but built on a consensus structure. Having said that, the United Nations is the body that has established the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. So I think the United Nations is probably looking at its own processes and saying, how do we accelerate change in order to meet the goals that we have set? And by extension, the IMO will be doing the same. I was excited this morning to see across one of my news feeds the announcement that the IMO has developed 5 centers of excellence around the world in primarily developing countries in order to examine ways that we can work with emissions and reducing emissions through utilization of existing technologies, changing operating practices, etc. All, of course, within the framework of MARPOL and all of the other conventions that we have. So it really is an exciting time to be here in Copenhagen at GST because there's so much going on.
Yeah, and I mean we've heard a lot, I think, about collaboration, and of course there's change being driven by the regulation, but in terms of ensuring that that works and ensuring that that works in a way that is acceptable as much as possible for, by the industry. How do you think, is a collaborative approach, is that, the culture of shipping, is that a challenge, do you think? Or do you genuinely see that people within the shipping industry are changing in terms of that realization that really we need to all pull together in order to move forward for the greater good, if you like?
Well, I think it's important to examine the history of shipping. It's thousands and thousands of years old. And because of the nature of going out to sea and coming back, you're almost point to point and operating within a silo. And those silos have grown and expanded. But up until recently, we have operated within our own silos, whether they be the corporate entity, the sectoral entity, or the technology entity. Those barriers are starting to drop and collaborations are starting to grow. We've seen this within our ship owner associations like the International Chamber of Shipping, Intertanko, BIMCO, Intercargo, and the collaboration within sectors and within shipping. I think, though, that technology is at least modern technology, is predicated on collaborations. I remember about 10 years ago being so excited when Microsoft and Google were exchanging technologies, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could apply that? Well, I think we're starting to see that, maybe in these centers of excellence, maybe if we can develop these technology hubs that are in maritime centers so that they can then reach out into the local shipping community and get that knowledge base that they need. Because it's wonderful to have technology. It needs to be applicable and it needs to be practical. I know I'm on the advisory board of something called the Maritime Global Technology Innovation Center, and that is headquartered at SUNY Maritime College in New York. And it is, again, an opportunity for technology leaders to come together, but reach into the shipping community itself. And I think we've got areas around the world that facilitate those dialogues, because you could come up with the best mousetrap, but if it doesn't work on a vessel, it's not going to be able to fully realize its potential. And that's what we need to do. The other thing is to bring up from the thousands of years ago up to the present. The last 10 years have been the worst shipping cycle, if you will, in recorded, well, I say in recorded history. Martin Stopford says since 1845. But certainly,
we wouldn't want to argue
and
with
I
Martin
wasn't
Stopford.
around then, so certainly in my lifetime. But we are coming out of that now. But shipping is still running lean and mean. So we have to find those opportunities for collaboration so we can be as efficient as possible in moving forward.
Yes.
But is shipping reluctant to change? I think that's a misnomer. It's just that we need to facilitate that change and accelerate it.
Yep.
But we need to have all the partners working together. Collaboration is key.
Yeah, and I think that sums it up beautifully. Thank you so much, Carleen. We must leave it there because I know you're dashing off to another panel now, but thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Annie.